Directors, we're live. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ian Morrison. I'm the Electoral Area Director for Cowichan Lake South Scotts Falls. I'll be chairing your regular meeting of the Electoral Area Services Committee for Wednesday, November 6th. I'd like to begin by noting that and recognizing that the CVRD is on the unceded territories of the Cowichan, Malahat, Subasat, Halalt, Penelakut, Staminas, Liaxin, Paquichin, DT Dot, and Pachi Dot nations, whose people have walked gently here for thousands of years. With that, I'd like to note that we have a fairly full agenda today, and that there are some items in which we won't be able to have any public input on. They're noted in the agenda, but with that, I'd also like to note that any of the items from today's agenda will be going, unless otherwise noted, to the Wednesday, November the 13th, 2024 board meeting. And also remind everyone, including myself, that if your electronic devices aren't off, they should be muted or on vibrate. Ms. Boyd is here to help us get through today's meeting. So with that, Ms. Boyd, what's next on our
Thank you, Chair. May I please an approval of the agenda?
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That motion carries. Next item.
Number 2, we have adoption of the minutes, that the minutes of the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of October 16th, 2024 be adopted.
Everyone's had an opportunity to review them. They were published last week. Motion to approve. Moved. Seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries. Ms. Boyd, next item.
Thank you, Chair. We have no business arising from the minutes. We'll move to public input period. The public input period procedure. The public input period is to offer the public an opportunity to comment on an agenda item before the committee considers the item. The public input period procedure policy allows for an allotment of 15 minutes where the speaker is welcome to comment on any items on the agenda up to a maximum of 3 minutes. This excludes items that are or have been subject to a public hearing. Input from the community is valued and appreciated. We request that input is presented in a friendly and respectful manner. Your cooperation in maintaining a safe, respectful, and orderly environment is greatly appreciated.
Now would be your opportunity if you'd like to provide input to the committee on items on today's agenda. Please come forward to the lectern and provide your input. If you happen to have an item on the agenda and you're an applicant, you will be given an opportunity to provide any additional comments to committee in advance of the consideration of a resolution. Again, I'll ask, is anyone wanting to provide input on today's agenda items? Seeing none, Ms. Boyd, next item.
Thank you, Chair. We have no delegations. We'll move to correspondence. C1, we have a grant and aid request, Electoral Area D, Cowichan Bay, regarding Cowichan Estuary Restoration Conservation Association.
Would you read the resolution?
Thank you. That it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area D, Cowichan Bay, in the amount of $1,400 be provided to the Cowichan Estuary Restoration and Conservation Association to support the assessment of glass fiber in the Cowichan Estuary and its impact on benthic fauna and food chain. Thank you.
Turn to the director.
I move that.
Do we have a seconder? Moved and seconded. Any discussion on that item? Seeing none, all those in favor? Are there any opposed? None opposed, that motion carries. Ms. Boyd,
C2, we have the recommendation that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area D, Cowichan Bay, in the amount of $500 be provided to the Cowichan Bay Improvements Association to support the cost of materials to construct additional combination garbage, recycling, and refundable collection bins.
moved by Director Abbott, seconded by Director Nicholson. Did you want to speak to that item?
Thank you, Chair. In a continuing effort to beautify and keep Cowichan Bay Village clean, a group of volunteers are working with materials donated and or otherwise sourced through the assistance of this aid and they're building it at the Maritime Center. It's one of several, and I think over the next couple of months, we'll see more and more of these type of improvements. The bay, as people are probably familiar, is getting busier and busier with lots of refuse and refundables and recyclables, but not so many places to get rid of it. So it's an initiative of the re-energized Business Improvement Association. So I wholly support this.
Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Are there any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Next item.
C3, that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area C, Cobble Hill, in the amount of $500 be provided to the Quatson Secondary School for two $250 bursaries for two graduating students that reside in Electoral Area C, Cobble Hill, to support their future education or training.
Look at moved by Director Segal, seconded by Director Wilson. Director Wilson, would you like to comment on that?
I've made one provision on this particular one, Mr. Chair. I've asked that one of these bursaries be given to a pupil who, and I'm searching for the right words, has a disability of some kind, who's not perhaps as active or as forward as most of the people who receive these bursaries. So basically, that's the only provision that I've made, that some of those who are less able gets one of these bursaries. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. Next item, Ms. Boyd.
Thank you, Chair. C4, that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area C, Cobble Hill, in the amount of $500 be provided to the Victoria Foundation to offset expenses of running the annual book sale at Bonner School that provides ongoing grants to local charities.
Moved by Director Wilson, seconded by Director Segal. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. Ms. Boyd, next item.
We have C5, that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area E, Cowichan Station, Statlam, Glenora, in the amount of $1,000 be provided to the Cowichan Estuary Restoration and Conservation Association to support the Cowichan Estuary Glass Fiber Project that is assessing impacts of glass fiber, reinforced plastics on estuary life.
Moved by Director Nicholson, seconded by Director Abbott. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries, and as noted, those will go to the November 13th board meeting. Next item, Ms. Boyd.
Thank you, Chair. No information items. We'll move to 8R1, report from the Development Services Division regarding application number ALR 24D02 1300 Mindy Road, PID 002 921 561.
Mr. Buchan.
Good afternoon.
Maybe before you get started, just for the benefit of the folks in the room today, we'll have the presentation by staff and then followed by questions from the committee to staff. Then I will go to ask if the applicants in the room, if there's anything that they would like to add, perhaps take a question or two from directors if there are any, and then we will proceed to a resolution of some sort, and at that point, discussion and input will cease and will stay amongst the people around the committee table. So with that, Mr. Buchan, take her away.
Thank you. And if we could advance to the next slide, please. This application is for the property located at 1300 Mindy Road in Electoral Area D, as shown on the screen. Next slide, please. The purpose of this report is to introduce an agricultural land reserve application for a 188 square meter residential building that contains a suite. Under ALR regulations, a second residence exceeding 90 square meters requires consideration from and approval by the Agricultural Land Commission. Next slide, please. In support of the application, the agent has provided a site plan showing the location of the existing home, as well as the location of the 188 accessory building that they wish to convert into a residence, and that's shown on the map as the new building. Next slide, please. For context, the owner located a decommissioned single-family dwelling onto the property for the purposes of serving as an accessory storage building, and are now seeking to convert a portion of that building into a suite. Attachment G of the staff reports shows how they intend to separate the suite on the top floor from the workspace below, and that the intent is to use the bottom floor to support farm activities on the site. The suite is approximately 94.02 square meters and is therefore oversized under CVRD bylaws by 4.02 square meters. If the CVRD's bylaws were the only relevant factor, the solution would be to modify the building to reduce its size to 90 square meters, or to seek a variance for the additional 4.02 square meters. However, ALR regulations measure the size of second dwellings, including detached suites, differently from the CVRD, and the ALC must generally consider the structure as a whole, with few exceptions. So before the CVRD can contemplate a variance or a building permit to allow for modifications to the suite, a decision from the Agricultural Land Commission is required, and that is through a non-adhering residential use application. Next slide, please. No concerns were raised from internal divisions. The Building Inspections Division has advised that if the LC approves the oversized second dwelling, a building permit would be required. And if there's not a way to shave off the extra 4.02 square meters, a variance would be needed as well. Next slide, please. Staff are recommending that the application be forwarded to the LC without comments. I'm here for questions, and the agent is in the room.
Thank you, Mr. Buchan. Any questions for staff? Director Abbott?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Richard, for all the help you've provided this progressive farm family in the Area D, Cowichan Bay region. What's the prognosis of the ALC changing its view? They're taking up no more of a home plate, no more of a footprint than 94.02 meters. Is there a possibility that this is more administrivia, that no more agricultural land is disappearing than at present, and just move it rapidly along?
Through the chair.
Mr. Buchan.
It's challenging for me to speak on behalf of the Agricultural Land Commission. They do have a policy on their website, policy L26, that speaks to some of the considerations they bring into play when looking at oversized buildings. And there are changes to allow for second residences, I believe, were 2019, 2020, so it is still relatively recent in the ALR.
If I may?
As long as you're not asking him to prognosticate. Go ahead.
Hold on. Insofar as variance charges, should this get through the ALC and come back to the CVRD for what seems like a minor variance of 4 square meters, is there room in to waive application fees?
Through the chair, I'm not entirely sure off the top of my head, but that's certainly something we can look at when the application for variance comes in, if it comes in. One of the challenges right now is that we don't know if the LC is going to approve the oversized residence.
We have Director Wilson, followed by Nicholson.
Thank you, Chair. We had a community meeting yesterday in the Coal Hill Hall, attended by farmers and the farming community yesterday. And one of the things that was heard over and over again was the lack of being able to go into succession planning and the building of accessory buildings. As Director Abbott has pointed out, this is a very minor one. So I'm wondering, although we're sending this to the ALC without comment, are we allowed to make comment such as we like this, is rather than no comment at all?
Mr. Buchan.
Thank you. Through the chair, just bear with me as I pull up the report here. So if I can direct the attention to page 3 of the staff report, there's some commentary here about the Harmonized Official Community Plan, specifically policy 4.3.210, which states that the CVRD board will only support non-farm uses that are beneficial to agriculture on parcels that have BC assessment farm status. I suppose we could state that as the lands have farm status, the application is being advanced.
Good, and I would like to see something along those lines to help this along through the ALC process, which we know to be pretty slow. Thank you very much, Mr. Buchan.
Thank you.
So Director Wilson, while we're considering other directors' questions and comments, perhaps you might think about what resolution you might put forward different from the staff recommended resolution.
Absolutely, I'll work on that now. Thank you.
Director Nicholson.
I'm fine, that was my comment, so it would be option 2 with whatever commentary we want to add.
Thank you. Director Abbott.
I'd already given thought to adding comments to a motion, if I may.
We will get to putting a resolution forward in just a moment or two, so hold on to those comments.
And Mr. Chair, I'm quite happy to let the Director for the area make that resolution.
Fantastic. That was your remarks. Director Nicholson's been taken care of. Do we have any other questions for staff at this moment? Excellent. Mr. Buchan, you can have a seat as the applicant here. I believe we have Ms. Leider. Did I get that right? This is an opportunity, if you have any additional comments, anything else that
Okay.
you would like us to hear before we
Thank you,
consider
and I
it.
have 5 minutes, right? 5?
You've got, it's at the discretion of the chair and the committee. You're not a delegate, but if you've got some additional comments beyond what's in the staff report, then feel free.
I have my stopwatch.
We've got a stopwatch in front of you. I would suggest, go ahead.
I will keep it short.
Thank you.
We were caught in the middle of a big kerfuffle and law changes, as you know, because the CVRD, the ALC had their laws in place about buildings. The CVRD was still working the bylaws out. So we applied for an accessory building because there was nothing else we could apply for. I knew under political pressure the laws would change because of the homelessness. So then the laws did change, and Richard was the first one to find out and tell me after I asked around. He was completely on top of things. And so they changed, and then we went, oh, okay, I wanted to build an artist studio. It would have involved taking the bathtub out, all the kitchen cabinets, the stove. I couldn't do art like that because I'm a textile artist as well. I need a bathtub and a stove. So then we went, okay, we have homelessness. There's a baby on its way in our family. Why don't we reapply for a secondary dwelling, which we did. So all along, I had been in contact with the Agricultural Land Reserve with Martin Collins, who worked there for about 30 years. And I got a really beautiful letter from him saying, well, you can lop something off the building to appease the CVRD, but what is much easier for you, I have the letter here if you want it, I have an extra copy. What is much easier for you is you apply to us for a non-adhering residential use application. And so we did. And they told us it's $900 and they need up to 6 months to decide. Now, in the face of homelessness, that's a awfully long time, but I can't judge them. I don't know. They're short-staffed. I'm going to wait half a year and the building sits empty. That's fine. So before, Martin Collins had said to me, well, the basement, if you have 50% infill with land, we won't count it as a dwelling. That was a telephone conversation that I wrote down and recorded, and he remembers. So then it all changed, and now I think what we have to prove is that the 2 stories are separated, which they are already. The staircase is taken out, whoops. The upstairs will be rented to a young family that is interested in farming with my kids because they have a baby and it's a lot of work on 6 acres. They have beautiful land and they do market garden and chickens and orchard and apple juice and whatnot. They work really hard, but it's too much. So now we decided the bottom will be then for preparation, for dehydration of fruit, for storing the equipment, for drying the garlic, which we have tons of, and selling it. I don't live there, but I am the kind of consultant, and I finance everything from my savings and my pension. I'm completely broke, as you can imagine, with the cost. And every time a municipality wants more money, I go, oh, I wish I could buy some boards or some nails or get the building finished. It's very, very hard. If I had to do this again, I would not do this, never in a lifetime. So here we are in the middle of it. We would like to finish it, and we would like to rent the upstairs and use the downstairs for farming. And the house is beautiful. And yesterday I was in the meeting about the home plates. And you know, intuitively, we picked a beautiful site for the house. It's very, very close to the road. It's a little bit set away from the farm, and we took out all land that is valuable for the farm. I'm getting there. The chickens and garden area, so we saved all that. So we put the house very close to the road, and it got us a complaint right away. We have 2 Natbar neighbors. They complained to you guys that the house was too close to the road because we wanted to save our farmland. So this is the home plates you have to be careful about, because I seriously think that farmers do the right thing if they love their farms. And if they are rich folks and they bought their 1,000 acres to have a Christmas tree farm, they're not real farmers. We are real farmers. And thank you for your consideration, and I hope this thing goes through.
Thank you very much for that, and I will just ask if the directors have any questions for the applicant. Seeing none, thank you very much. And with that, after Director Abbott has sat down,
If I may, Chair, I would like to move wholeheartedly that this application be forwarded to the ALC with the following comments. That the intention of this young family is to rehabilitate dormant 6 acres of farmland in a creative and innovative food production system, much as we heard at the farming comprehensive zoning.
Can I stop you just for a second or briefly interrupt? Have you had your comments, have you spoken with staff about the nature of your comments?
Nay.
I think we're going to take an opportunity, just as we learned in a workshop this morning, and we're going to table this item and come back to it. So could I have a motion to have this tabled until the next item, or until we can get some correct verbiage? After the break, yes. Do we have a seconder? Moved and seconded, all in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. With that, I will turn to Ms. Boyd and R2.
Thank you, Chair. R2, report from the Development Services Division regarding application number DVP 24D02 4461 Trans-Canada Highway, PID 026301482.
Ms. Woods?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Michelle's working on the presentation. Awesome. Next slide, please. So this is an application to vary the CVRD sign bylaw to permit for the placement of 2 illuminated oversized fascia signs and 2 illuminated oversized freestanding signs at the Cowichan Bay Fire Hall. It's a part of an ongoing redevelopment with the Cowichan Bay Fire Hall, and there are, as you may be able to do the math, 4 total signs proposed. The 2 freestanding signs will contain double-sided electronic message centers and will be situated along the road frontages so that the messages will be visible from traffic traveling in both directions. And the fascia signs will face the road frontages attached to the buildings. And next slide, please. So while the signage doesn't meet the CVRD sign bylaw regulations, it appears that the size of the signs is proportionate to the overall site. And by making conditions on the permit, such as limiting the level of illumination and prohibiting flashing elements, the signage is not going to significantly impact neighboring properties. And next slide, please. And the recommendation is before you.
Don't go anywhere, Ms. Woods. Questions for staff? Director Segal.
Can you just help me understand the difference between an animated and an illuminated sign?
So through the chair, illuminated is just, it is lit up, yeah, backlit, not sort of with the lamps that overhang, yeah, so it'd be lit from the back. The animated signs are that the messages change. And then a flashing sign would be like, you know, something would flash in front of you and very distracting.
Yes. Director Nicholson?
I have strong reservations about this. I think about that sign at Thrifty's at Beverly Corners, and I find that very distracting for driving. And I think that in general, our community likes dark sky kind of things. So I am not against necessarily the size of the signs or the fact that it's important to provide good information, because the current sign that they have is too small to actually be able to read from the road. But I am worried about the lighting side of it, and I would be interested if my fellow director was interested in having this sent to the APCs for their comments.
We'll get to you just a second, Director Abbott. I've got you on the list, and I'm going to insert myself just now because of timeliness more than anything. And I was kind of hoping that Director Nicholson would speak up to this, because we sat at this table with Director Abbott's predecessor and sat through many discussions about sign by law, the Trans-Canada Highway, the dark skies, and there's been significant reluctance to vary or deviate from the sign by law. So I know that when we looked at a business a little further down the road that represented 2 different franchises, and they just wanted a second sign. And there was significant discussion and debate for a second sign on a frontage at a business. So I'm not really enthusiastic about the number, the departure from the sign's size within the bylaw, and the animation attached to it. And I'd love to be convinced. We come here with an open mind, but not an empty mind. And I'm looking forward to perhaps hearing from the applicant. I'll go to Director Abbott, then Martman.
I cannot say it any better than Directors Morrison and Nicholson have said it, except for perhaps illumination intensity should also be questioned. While public safety is of utmost concern, nobody wants this fire hall and its members not to have the ability to communicate with the public, but there comes a point that there are numerous ways that information gets out there, including signage. But I think this, as Director Nicholson has suggested, warrants sober second thought and going back to perhaps a joint APC of areas D and E to thoroughly explore what's normal, what happens at other fire halls, and is in keeping with the corridor that on one side is going through a Chittislow community and on the other a very rural and agrarian community. So I welcome that opportunity to possibly refer this back to an APC, joint APC.
Pardon me, I haven't looked at whether that's one of the options presented by staff at this point, but hang on to that thought. And as a director for the area, perhaps you should be looking at drafting some wording for that. I've got Directors Martman and Wilson next on the list. Director Martman.
Thank you, and I thought we were sort of at questions point, so I'll go back to questions if that's okay. So in light of dark skies, is there any kind of assessment or evaluation that you can do? Because my recall of that corridor is that there is a lot of light, just from the Ministry of Transport, maybe other factors too that I'm not aware of, but do you do an evaluation? Because will this impact dark skies at all?
So through the chair, we as staff are not experts in illumination of signage. The applicant is here and they are the owner of the sign company, so they will likely be able to speak a little bit more to that for you. We have been in contact with Ministry of Transportation as well. The part of the conditions were formed based on the conditions on the development variance permit were formed based on recommendations from the chief building official, but also from recommendations from the Ministry of Transportation regarding things that they consider like animated signs that are distracting to traffic, and illuminations that are, we all know thrifties. We all know that it can be distracting. So they do consider that, and that was part of the recommendation behind those conditions formed on the development variance permit. With regard to your question about actually assessing like a number, no, staff don't have that expertise, but the applicant should be able to speak to it a little bit more.
Follow up?
So at your desires, I'd like to hear from the applicant today on that, if that's possible, before we table or move or
Normal
revert.
practice.
Okay, thank you.
We'll hear direction or questions for staff, and we'll go to the applicant following. Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm a bit confused here because on the one hand we have protection and the need to spread information from the fire departments. Fine, that's great. And then on the other hand, we have the safety. Well, if you're traveling at 80 kilometers an hour and you can't read that sign, is that a problem? I don't think so. So I'm confused about this, and I'm not really sure that I'm in a position to support it. But I would like to see it go back to the APC. I'm sorry, there's not a question in there.
I thank you for that, I guess. Director Nicholson, your mic's still on, and seeing no further questions for staff, don't go to. Director Acton.
Well, I was going to save it, but I guess it would be a good question for staff. I think this is, on one hand, a really easy decision, on the other hand, not so easy. So then, for me, it would make it a lot easier if we had some kind of visual, like a drawing or how big are we talking when we give these measurements, and along with the lighting, and is there a way to ask for something better?
Ms. Woods?
Through the chair, there were site plans attached to the report that did have images of the signs. I know that,
compared to people, and
yeah,
I didn't see that.
There were the signage images. I don't believe that there were people. I don't know. I can't remember if there were people on that or not. It's on the attachment B, I think, the development variance permit, draft development variance permit. But I think Michelle's also gonna bring up the slide again that showed the signage plans.
And I, yeah, thank you for that.
So I'm on those, if you could just go to the next one, Michelle, that's a little easier to see. There is a measurement along the side, it's 10 feet to the bottom of the electronic message center. I believe it's about 8.5 feet to the bottom of where it says the low, moderate, high, the wildfire hazard.
Well, that shows a lot.
So
Makes it easy. Sorry.
Thank you for that. And I think for the purposes of this application, I think we're all looking forward to hearing from the applicant as well, given the indication that they are in the sign business, or at least the agents for those. So that will be very helpful and illuminating, I think. So I had to, sorry. Any further questions for Ms. Woods? Seeing none, thank you. Don't go too far. Would the applicants like to come up and, I'm not going to say illuminate us, but provide us with a little bit of information?
I probably don't need this thing, but anyhow, so I own the sign company that has presented this sign to the builders for this new building. So first off, we intentionally designed this sign to the size that the existing sign is right now in front of the existing fire hall. So if you're looking for a size comparison, this isn't a Thrifty Foods. This is basically a 6x8 sign. The message board itself is 4x8, but I mean the percentage of lettering, and we always recommend they leave the background non-illuminated. And I think the last slide that showed you the nighttime view is we tried to design it to be sensitive to the area. I was part of the Shawnigan Lake Fire Hall for 5 years and lived there for 7 years, several years ago. So I know how dark it gets up here. So when this sign illuminates, this is a daytime vision. So at night, it is quite subtle. The particular displays that we purchase, Optech in this particular case, is a very high quality board. And they have their own self-dimming mechanisms for in the evenings, so that it's not overwhelming. Like the one in front of the Memorial Arena in Victoria, it just about blows you out of your car. So they automatically dim. That said, you can adjust the lighting through the programming on these things as well, 0 to 100. So if somebody's not happy with it, dial it down. We sold one to the View Royal Fire Hall years ago, and they had it set so low you could barely see it. So there's lots of options. Yeah, lots of options as far as keeping it subtle. You can mandate to them how often the message changes, if you like, as part of the application. Highways recommends every 8 to 10 seconds. Is there any questions?
I think there may be a few questions. Director Abbott, you're first.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. I think it's catching some of us, those that live closest to the fire hall, a little off guard. And in anticipation of queries, it would be great to involve our community members, to let them have some input, to have somebody like yourself or your staff and the chief make a presentation showing us examples, showing the community members examples. And I would encourage that, along with my fellow director across the highway, that we have a joint APC, which is the opportunity for members of the concerned members of the community to hear what's at stake. But we don't want to do it and jeopardize the efficacy of the fire hall and its coming online. How critical, what's the timeline like at present if this gets held up for a couple of weeks for us to have a session?
A couple of weeks is no problem, yeah. There are 3 months turnaround from the point of ordering.
Thank you.
Director Acton.
Thank you. Well, seeing those visuals, and I'm sorry, I went back to look, I still couldn't find them, so I don't know if they're hiding in there somewhere. Really makes a big difference, I think. The location makes a lot of sense, and I know coming from Shawnigan Lake, we did have a water advisory at one point, and it was like, how do we get the message out? And since we've got some digital boards at the Legion and one at the community center, it has not been an issue. And I think we just make the decision here. It is sometimes nice to send it to the APC, but what if they don't even want it? Like, this is actually, it makes sense for the location. It's along the highway, can touch a lot of people, it's controllable. The fire department's gonna work with the community if they find it too bright and dim it down. And it's the same size that was there before. And I actually do recall seeing their other sign, and they would put stuff up, and it's just a good way to put information out. And if there's something else that's really important for the community that's not even fire related, I'm sure you can call the chief or the administrator or whatever and say, hey, we need some help getting this message out, and work together. So I don't think we should delay it, and we should just move on with allowing this. And some of our bylaws around the signage is actually makes it hard for the ones on the highway, and that's why they're here. Because they're really for the little storefront, but then they're not flexible for the ones that need to be kind of big because people are driving by, et cetera. So it makes a lot of sense to be right there. We're not talking about like in the bay or near the hub. So I think we should just save everybody some time and effort and wish them luck and carry on.
Thank you for that, Director Acton, and I need to get some clarification from our corporate officers, so we're going to take 5. Sorry. I know, I like that beaver. I know.
You want your neck?
We're just waiting for the hamster wheel to get going. Welcome back, everyone. I'm glad we had that opportunity to, lost my pen, that's all right. Any further questions for the applicants? Director Martman? I think that's where we were when we took that break, so.
Thank you. I'm not sure if you heard my question before. It was really about sort of how do you assess dark skies in an area when you're putting signage in? Whether a sign will impact like with this current lighting already from MODI, from Ministry of Transport, to what degree would normal, the signage as you're, suggesting it be used, would that have a marginal impact, a large impact, or hard to know?
Hard to know. We don't have an exact science as far as measuring that goes. As I said earlier, we kind of designed this sign as subtle as possible, so the actual copy area where it says Cowichan Bay Fire Rescue is actually non-illuminated, and just the edges of the letters, because it's a routed push-through acrylic letter, just the edges glow, so that keeps that very subtle. It's very classy, tasteful, and non-garish. We're finding in our industry overall, the fully illuminated backlit signs are going away because they are light pollution, and I agree. So we try to design something that's a little classier, a little nicer. The biggest concern here is the digital display. That comes down to the operator because you can dial those things right down or dial them right up. So that will be under the control of, I guess, the fire hall or whoever's programming it. But the whole idea behind them is just to be able to get messages out to the public. It's not selling anything. It's just addressing what's going on. If you checked your chimney, have you got a plan to get out alive? Amber alert, the police need it, bang, you put it up. It's a road closure, a power outage. The nice thing too about this is If we lose other ways of communicating with the public, say there's a major power outage or a cell tower goes down or something, the fire halls have gensets and they stay lit up. So if you kept the board lit, you can get the message out what's going on. So it's intended to help the community. It's, I'm not really trying to sell anything here. There's no advertising on it. So it's strictly for messages for the community from the fire hall. But the brightness is a controllable issue. As I say, we sold one to View Royal, and it was dimmed down for about 3 or 4 months, and I actually called them and said, you need to bring it up a bit, because it was the other end of the scale. There's been other areas where it's too bright, so you phone them and say, hey, turn it down, you're going to hear from somebody. So it's common sense to some degree as well. We've sold them to many fire halls. Langford has one, Colwood has one, View Royal has one, Shawnigan Lake even has one. So they are a very useful tool, and that's what they're intended to be. So, and it saves the guys going out there on a ladder with those little letters and sliding them in, and those are all fully illuminated backlit. So actually, to tell you the truth, this one will be less obtrusive than the one they already have. So
Follow up?
Okay, this might be a lighthearted question, so bear
sure,
with me.
okay.
What happens to the animated Christmas lights? Okay, you don't know. It's
Oh,
fine.
the ones on the roof. Oh, yes, I've seen them. The dancing on the roof with the deer and Santa Claus. I'm not sure you'll have to. Yeah. That is lighthearted. Thank you for that. Because I'm not used to this, so I'm a little bit nervous. Thanks.
So any further questions for the applicant? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just add a comment too?
You could certainly add a comment because we haven't put a resolution on the floor yet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just wanted to also point out that because this is a development variance permit, there was notification sent to the public. Everybody within 100 meters of this, of the fire hall received a notice. Staff have not received any comment back supporting or opposing this particular variance request. And with some concern, that might be too high, with some concern around the illumination as well. That is why staff put a condition in the permit that says I can't remember the exact wording, but it's around having a condition that says the illumination cannot distract the public. So there is some control there as well. As Dan said, it is, on the operator. However, if we do receive complaints, part of that condition was put in place so that we could contact the fire hall and say, you've got this condition, lower it.
Thank you. So I've seen Director McClinton. Do you have a question for staff? Because I think the director is ready to
No, I
put-
don't. Sorry,
put a-
it was a comment. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
When we're ready to discuss. Thank
I
you.
think Director Abbott was prepared to put a resolution forward. Director Abbott.
Thank you, Chair. And I want to thank the fulsome discussion that we've had today. We've learned more. The agent slash supplier slash first responder with some experience has comforted me that there are lots of opportunities to modify. And in keeping with public safety, I wish to move the staff recommendation.
Do we have a seconder? We have a seconder. Now is the time for discussion and comments. So did you want to speak to the resolution or you just sort of did? Director McClinton, did you have anything to add? I'll call the question. Oh, hang on, Director Nicholson.
I'm not going to support this. I have no idea whether this is appropriate or not for my community, and I know that this is an important issue, and I would have appreciated it going to the APC.
Thank you. Ms. Boyd, could you read the resolution, please?
Thank you, Chair. That it be recommended to the board that development variance permit number DVP 24D02 4461 Trans-Canada Highway PID 026301482 be issued.
Seeing no other discussion, call the question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? 2 opposed, Director Nicholson, Director Deck. Motion carries. Next item, Ms. Boyd.
Thank you, Chair. R3, report from the Development Services Division regarding application number DVP 24G03 3491
Point of
Wilshire Road.
Director Martman,
I think we rose from break, so would we go back to R1?
are you moving that we
I haven't had a chance.
We had the break.
did have the break? It's a great point. Then, on that point, it is in order, and we're going to have the director for the area conclude the wording while working with Mr. Buchan. So we're taking 5 minutes, and you're going to conclude that. Can I have directors take their seats? Could I have a motion to rise R1 off the table? Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? R1 is now live, back to exactly where we were when we stopped and had a couple of breaks. I'll turn to Director Abbott.
Thank you, Chair. And with the abundant help from staff, I was able to put together something a bit more succinct. And I would like to move that it be recommended to the board that application number ALR24D02 for a NARU within the Agricultural Land Reserve be forwarded to the Agricultural Land Commission with the following comments. 1, the application is consistent with the CVRD HOCP Policy 4.3.210 as the proposed residence in support of a farm use and is proposed to be located on a property that has farm status. And 2, the CVRD board considers the residents to be supportive of a farm operation.
Do we have a seconder? Moved and seconded. Discussion?
Can you elaborate on that second part?
Well, I wanted to
Director
elaborate, oh, my mic's still on. I wanted to elaborate, if I may, Chair, earlier, and this provides an opportunity. Here's a young family, children of the applicant that we heard of today, that have taken 6 rather moribund agricultural acres, and they've intensified it. They're getting it back into active production. Moreover, not only growing their own family in the original residence, but they've repurposed a home on site to allow for more residential capacity and more farm help. So in essence, they're accomplishing exactly what the province and our community is calling for: intensification and utilization of farmland, growing products and delivering to our community, and fulfilling the much needed housing, all at the same time as recycling a building instead of it being trashed. And it's a beautiful, cute, in effect, 4.4 square meters over the allowable footprint. It's I think they're doing a lot, and you can sense a bit of frustration from the person who's financing the application or the process. It's
Director Abbott, does that apply to the question that was posed to you?
Well,
a little clarification on the point?
Yeah, that's a lot of clarification.
Thank you. We had a workshop this morning, and we were talking about trying to make our meetings a little shorter, so. Any other questions, comments in regards to the resolution on the floor? Seeing none, all those in favor? Are there any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. That concludes that very long R1. What are we back to now, Ms. Boyd?
R3, report from the Development Services Division regarding application DVP 24G03-3491, Wilshire Road, PID 005-832-365.
Welcome back, Ms. Woods.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Happy to be here. So this application is to vary the Electoral Area G zoning bylaw to increase the size of a detached suite from 85 square meters to 95 square meters. Next slide, please. Thank you. Subject property is located on the corner of Chemainus Road and Wilshire Road and currently contains an existing single detached dwelling. The R2 zoning permits for the detached dwelling or an attached suite as accessory to the single detached dwelling. However, that detached suites are limited to floor area of 85 square meters. The applicant is requesting to increase the permitted floor area by 10 square meters. They have provided a letter of rationale in support of the application as well, which I believe was attached to the staff report. And they outline their intent to construct the suite in order to enable aging in place. And then next slide, please. Recommendation is before you.
Thank you, Ms. Woods. Any questions for staff? Is the applicant here? Would the applicant like to provide any additional comments? I'm here. Would you like to provide any additional comments?
Fire away if you have any questions.
Hang on, she's gonna make your mic live.
It's 10 square meters additional square footage, so 10 by 10 room, which won't be noticed anywhere on the build. Fire away, any questions you got?
Turn to my colleagues. Are there any questions for the applicant? If you must.
So I take it you're not an agricultural land?
No, but we're definitely having a garden.
Sorry, it's just because of the last couple
Yeah.
hours.
No, we're actually just doing a small scale of that, 100%, so. No bright lights. Yeah. Oh, yeah, no bright lights, yeah.
Thank you for that. We're done. Turn to the director for the area.
I would like to move the staff recommendation.
Is there a seconder? It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries. Again, that item will go to Wednesday, December the 13th board meeting. Ms. Boyd, next item.
Thank you, Chair. R4, application RZ23A01 2522 2528 Mill Bay Road, PID 032165315 and 032165307.
Ms. DeBenna.
Thank you, Chair. This is a for information report presenting the drainage management plan and erosion and sediment control plan for the rezoning application RZ23A01 on Mill Bay Road. The plans are a requirement of the board to be submitted prior to second reading of the amendment bylaws to allow for a 4-lot strata subdivision. And I think I'll just leave it at that. It's for information.
Thank you. Director Segal.
Thanks. Just wondering if we get these plans for all development, for all rezonings, when this is required, do we get this as an information item for all, or is it just this one?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, to Director Segal. So this, let me think. The application was presented in May of this year, and there was discussion about, or interest in seeing these items. So that is why it's here. And I guess it sort of depends on whether these types of plans are requested as part of a rezoning. May not always ask for them. But in this case, you expressed interest in seeing these, so that's why it's been brought forward. Yeah.
Certainly.
So just, I don't remember if it was me personally or us as a committee, but for me, the report seems super, super technical and way above my realm of expertise, and seems just like, part of the process moving forward, which is great. But definitely doesn't feel effective for me, since it's just like, yeah.
Ms. Pressman, please help us out.
Through the chair, I'll just comment that this particular application raised our awareness of this, and in the future, we will make sure to clarify whether or not the board actually wants to see it in a report, or whether we can just carry on with the process. Thank you.
This is an information item. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. DeBenna. Next item, Ms. Boyd.
Thank you, Chair. Application number RZ 23E01, Appaloosa Way, PID 009845119, PID 009849637, and PID 009849581.
Mr. Buchan.
Thank you, and if we could advance to the next slide, please. This report is to reintroduce a rezoning application, which includes a request to modify the density bonusing provisions of the R5 zone. The agents are presently proposing to develop 8 fee simple lots. The revised application was last considered by the EASC on April 3rd, 2024. Staff recommended referral to external agencies at that time. That referral feedback has been received and is addressed in the report. Next slide, please. Subject properties are located in Electoral Area E and have road frontage on Belvedere Crescent and Appaloosa Way. And next slide, please. For context, the subject properties were part of a larger development in the R5 zone. Zoning permits a maximum of 50 lots with density bonusing provisions. 27 of the 50 lots have already been built, and 2 lots have been provided to the CVRD under previous subdivision phases. Just on the screen is a quick summary of where the trigger points are for additional lots. Right now, the agent is proposing 8 additional lots, so that would trigger 2 more lots to come to the CVRD, which would be a total of 4. Previous application was for 17, which would have triggered the 4 additional lots for the total of 6. Next slide, please. As previously noted, the EASC considered a previous proposal for 17 lots at their December 6th, 2023 meeting. Despite the 23 lots being permitted in the R5 zone, the agents determined that full build-out would not be possible given the extent of watercourses on site that had not been previously mapped. And with that 17, there would have been a requirement for 4 additional lots to be provided to the CVRD. Next slide, please. The current application includes a revision to 8 lots. This would trigger 2 lots to be provided to the CVRD. This revision to 8 lots is based off of trying to better achieve the CVRD's development permit requirements. Next slide, please. Approximately 23 hectares of the property is subject to a land conservancy covenant, which prevents development and anticipates future construction of a regional park in the form of trails. This land is identified as being an important trail connection in the Community Parks and Trails Master Plan for the electoral area. Next slide, please. The agent is requesting that the CVRD consider accepting the covenanted lands in lieu of the 2 lots that would otherwise be required under an 8-lot subdivision. We've attempted on this map here to show the rough boundaries of those lots as well as the proposed park. Next slide, please. The advisory planning commissions were generally supportive of the proposal to provide the TLC covenanted lands in lieu of the additional lots. And it's understood that further works would need to occur at the subdivision stage, including greater clarity to the components of the riparian area protection regulation, which would be through a development permit process. So that is down the road if the application is approved. Coordination with the Land Conservancy would also be required through the rezoning process and to take the land out and give it to the CVRD. Next slide, please. Staff have recommended that the draft zoning bylaws be created with conditions to be met prior to final adoption, which would typically be around 3rd reading. This includes the registration of a covenant to require that the parkland be dedicated prior to future development of the sites, as well as some comments and recommendations from our advisory planning commissions around protections for riparian areas. I'm here for questions, and the applicants are in the room.
Thank you, Mr. Buchan. Turn to directors for questions. Director McClinton.
Thank you, Chair. I remember this coming to the board table. I just felt off with where we ended up with going with it. Could you, if it's possible, just in briefly as possible, just remind me the history of this application and just the part that I'm most interested in is it switched owners and then there was misinformation the new owner got from the previous owner. Is that possible?
Let me jump in and say, perhaps Mr. Buchan can provide you a brief synopsis beyond the report on the staff's perspective, and
Yeah.
with the applicants being in the room, I'm sure they would be able to provide you with a brief synopsis from their perspective. So hold that part for them. Mr. Buchan, what can you provide to Director McClinton?
Thank you. Through the chair, the previous 27 lots were developed by the previous owner of the lands. This new agent is looking at developing out the rest of it. And in their conversations with us, they've done some environmental studies to identify that there's more watercourses than initially anticipated. I think they can speak to their experience with the real estate transaction, and I'm not the one to speak to that.
Thank you.
Any additional questions for staff? Director Nicholson.
Thank you. So is there a way that the area that supposedly can house 8 lots, is there a way that it could be developed so that there would be more lots? Given the existing watercourses and constraints?
Mr. Buchan.
Through the chair, I think we heard from the agents at the Advisory Planning Commission that they were looking at creative solutions. There isn't a whole lot of options to find those creative solutions. One item that was considered was changing the zoning bylaw under section 1212 to allow for the watercourses to be included in the lot calculations, but that hasn't been brought by the agent to this table, so it's not part of the board consideration. Another item that was discussed was flexibility for density averaging for Bearland stratas, but that's also not before the board today. And in fact, the current zoning would not incentivize a density averaging for a strata. So I can't guarantee that there wouldn't be a future application coming forward, but that application would be seen by the board and considered by the board.
Hang on, Director McClinton. Director Nicholson,
I
follow
just
up.
didn't hear.
Okay.
Can you just repeat the very last thing you said?
Yes, so one of the other items that was brought up was looking at some opportunities for density averaging, which would be typically through a Bearland strata. If those items which are not part of this application are brought forward at a future date, that would be a future application and would have to come through the board.
Director Nicholson.
So my follow-up question is, if the developer comes forward in the future, would we be able to ask for an amenity contribution of a lot? Say if he came forward with a request for a density strata, whatever it was called?
Mr. Buchan.
Through the chair, if the applicant came forward after this rezoning with a provision to further amend the zoning to allow for increased density, that would be a discussion that we could have at that time.
At that time, okay, thank you.
I'm really reluctant, but I'm going to ask a question. So, first, can I confirm the details? The exclusion of SPIA area, for lack of a better term, from overall lot size calculation was brought into the Area E zoning bylaw prior to these applicants purchasing the property, but it is in force today.
Yes.
Okay, so is there potential, and this is probably for Ms. Churulf, given there's a desire to see potential for additional building here, is there a means by which and what was the specific section of the zoning?
So that's section 1212 of the zoning bylaw.
Section 1212. Is there a means by which section 1212 can be, I don't want to say suspended or waived, or is there language that could be developed? We don't want to put at risk riparian area, but would it make a difference if it were calculated as part of the overall lot size? Mr. Buchan.
Just to be clear, that is not part of this application. We have explained that is a separate rezoning application. So if there was a desire by the agent to add that to the present request, that could be brought forward. We could review that proposal, and that might trigger additional referrals, but that's presently not part of the application.
Yeah, I kind of figured as much. Okay, thank you. Director Nicholson.
I'll just move the recommendation when you're ready.
I should go to, no further questions for staff, give the applicants an opportunity. So would the applicants like to provide any additional information or comment to the committee today? Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, board members. So, yeah, it's been a journey on this application. I appreciate you seeing it again. We've kind of gone all around and around and around, and since Councillor McClinton, you were asking for a little bit of background, just some quick summary on it. Yes, when we purchased the original lot plan that we were purchasing showed 23 lot subdivision possibility. And that was given under the, with the zoning information without us understanding that the 1212 clause was applicable to this application. We had conversations with CVRD, with them, with the sellers. That information just wasn't made aware to us. So when we finally closed on the property and submitted the application, that's when 1212, we became aware of 1212 being applicable to this land, which automatically reduced it from 23 lots down to 17. But then with the extensive amount of riparian area that was found on the land as well, with that removal, you know, it just continued to reduce and reduce and reduce. So the whole premise of this application is really just trying to find a way to get it done. This land is intended to be developed. It's the final phase of the area. All the previous development was done without the constraints that exist today. Unfortunately, that's the situation that we're in. Through the process, you know, we started with a density averaging sort of concept. It was very aggressive originally. It was a lot more aggressive than we probably should have put forward, but that was because the constraints around servicing these lands to get anything more than what we're able to achieve require common stratas or common water systems, which are really complicated, as you guys are probably well aware, and they create a whole bunch of additional processes, but the cost of putting those in is pretty great. So we then scaled back to just try and get done within the zoning. We've done everything that has been asked of us. We've brought forward our application. We have respected the SPIA. We've tried to work with the intention of the OCP and the zoning bylaws to the best of our ability. And the current plan really just sort of indicates that to its most intent. The reason we're asking for the fee or for the give back to be removed is just simply because of the hardship that this development is under to even see any path forward whatsoever. And that was the case when we were talking about 17 to 23 lots. So now that we're down to the amount that we're at, it's not even it's a non-starter to even have that a part of the ability for us to move forward. We've spent a lot of time and a lot of money getting to this place, even just at this particular point, and we just can't continue doing that unless we know we have the flexibility to get something done here. Through the advisory panel recommendations, we had unanimous support for moving this application forward. There was comments from Area F that they wanted to see increased density. Area E approved it with some signage. They wanted us to put signage on the SPIAs, so that's in the application as well. So that advisory panel approved. The Parks Board, there was a lot of discussion in that meeting about how we could increase density on the land, because there was a very overwhelming sentiment that people wanted to see this land be more densified, or at least be more available. They ultimately didn't put that in writing, but it's the same sentiment we've been hearing all along the process for the last couple of years, how to do that. As per Mr. Buchan's comments about why those things aren't in here, we did go back and forth with staff trying to find a way to cluster some density, trying to work around the SPIA and put the housing into areas, and just be more creative with trying to open up some type of more density. And by that, I mean, we're talking maybe 15 to 17 lots at the absolute most if we clustered. The problem with that is, or the challenge with that is that island health requirements are minimum 1 hectare when you're using septic and wells. So that is the ultimate constraint, and the only way to navigate around that island health constraint is to do common septic or common water systems. both of which have so many moving parts and so many aspects that we just can't chance the delay or the complications associated with those types of things for us to really maybe get a few more lots out of this. It just doesn't make any sense, and we just wanted to present a simple path forward for us. The plan that we have is preliminary. Maybe there's some flexibility in there once we get the finalized surveying done, and maybe there's a lot or two extra that we can squeeze out of the entire plan, but we're not talking anything significant here. Clustering the density or clustering the lots is not going to achieve us really anymore. So we just decided not to bring any of that forward, especially the 1212. We know that it's a sensitive subject, specifically in Area E, and we didn't want to risk the application being turned down or denied or going for additional referrals for that aspect. If that's the wish of the board to present an option or a path forward for us to be able to relook at that. Again, it might get us a few more lots out of it, but ultimately the access to those lots all have to be respected via SPIA and that stuff as well. So we are at the mercy of trying to get this thing forward, and really we just want to get to the next step. We want to get to the first and second and third reading, and we're trying to provide a major community benefit with approximately 70 acres of parkland to the community, and get these lots delivered in the best way we know how.
Director McClinton.
Thank you for that summary. Just on a personal note, my heart goes out to you. It sounds like a pretty challenging experience, one that I wouldn't want to go through. Just curious, the Island Health, I should know this, but the Island Health, is that based on units or is it per person? So if there's one septic field and then one well, is that sort of the parameters? And if there's 2 people or 10, like what's your understanding there? It has nothing to do with the units. It's the size of land, just because the well and the septic, it's just a safety thing to have them a certain distance away. So that's just their minimum lot size requirements. How many dwellings or how many people are living on them is not the constraint. So that's flexible in their mind. The simplest path for us that we were looking at to sort of reduce or eliminate that requirement was to have a section of the land. I don't know if we could pull that map back up. I'm just for your information trying to help, but if we could put that map back up. There was an area right at the beginning where we could put a common septic in, where we could have maybe turned 4 lots into 10 or maybe 8 with a simple common septic system. That would have required us to get a lot averaging agreement done, which would have allowed smaller lots, and it wasn't even confirmed, and we'd have to get that approved, and plus we'd need another road. Thank you for that. Yeah, so in this picture, this is the old 17 lot plan, but we're talking about that little road around 13, 14, 15, and 16 there. Right at the beginning, but yeah. Yeah, you've answered my question. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Buchan, did you have anything to add?
Through the chair, we could probably provide some information from Island Health, but it is based off of lot sizes, and they have a chart basically that says, here's your minimum lot size when you have these conditions and on-site water and on-site septic, versus when you have community water coming in, you get a bit more flexibility because there's not that risk of contamination.
Director McClinton.
I know I'm out on a ledge here, so this is my last one. If this were ever to come back for increased density that's maybe been suggested, is that feasible under well and septic?
Through the chair, it's hard for me to comment on that because that requires engineers or OWPs to go out and investigate based on a design, and we don't have a design for that increase in density. We can say right now that the density bonusing provisions, when looking at a averaging scenario, look at a ratio of 1 unit per 1.6 hectares of gross land area. So it disincentivizes density averaging.
Any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none, thank you very much. Turn to Director Nicholson.
I'll move the recommendation.
Do we have a seconder? Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the resolution? Ms. Boyd, would you please read it for us?
You bet. That it be recommended to the board that the draft zoning amendment bylaw for application number RZ23E01 Appaloosa Way, PID 009-845-119, PID 009-849-637, and PID 009-849-581 be prepared by staff and forwarded to the board for consideration of first, second, and third reading. 2, that prior to the consideration of adoption of the zoning amendment bylaw for application number RZ23E01, Appaloosa Way, PID 009-845-119, PID 009-849-637, and PID 009-849-581, the following conditions be secured. A, registration of a Section 219 covenant to secure the following: the dedication in fee simple of the entirety of the approximately 23 hectares of land for community parks subject to existing land conservation covenant prior to any further site development, including the subdivision of land or issuance of a building permit. 2, a requirement to install at time of building permit visual barriers such as permanent fences or signs under the supervision of a qualified environmental professional to prevent encroachment into the streamside protection and enhancement areas by demarcating the SPIAs for future landowners and occupiers, and a general prohibition on construction buildings or structures within portions of the property designated P2 in accordance with Section 12.10C of the Electoral Area E, Cowich Station, Satlam, Glenora, zoning bylaw number 1840.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? There are none opposed, the motion carries. Ms. Boyd, next item.
Thank you, Chair. Going to R6, report from the Inspections and Enforcement Division regarding CVRD bylaw number 4582, dog regulation and impounding amendment bylaw 2024.
Mr. McDonald.
Good afternoon. Before you, it's a report that I have no presentation. This report's been before you a couple times before, and it was asked to bring it back looking for some other financial options to support the compensation for livestock being destroyed by dogs that are not licensed. So I did look into some other options such as increasing dog licensing fees as one, but we did that last year, and the results so far looking like we're actually even getting fewer people licensing their dogs, so I fully wouldn't recommend that we try to increase those fees anymore. One of the things we haven't done is kennel licenses. They have not been increased for a number of years, so I looked at what it would cost to, percentage-wise, if we increase that to cover this cost, and we'd be looking at about 100% increase there. So that is not also recommended at this point in time. Looking at even trying to take money from operating reserve, we're way below our committed values there, so again, something else that we're also not recommending. Also the report, I've also added in other considerations. So one of the things that we're finding too, I've been talking with what few colleagues we have left on the island that actually even support this. And actually, nobody else actually really even supports the compensation. They're actually looking at taking out their bylaws of who's have it left. What they're seeing there is they're not even paying out. What they're doing, they're actually looking to see that actually most people are not qualifying anymore. The burden of proof just isn't there. What's happening is that the dogs are not dogs, but it looks like the livestock are actually possibly being killed by other means such as cougars and other things. In working with our animal control contractor, it also looks like the issue from say about 30 years ago and farther back was a lot of times it was actually dogs on reserves that were running loose, and he's actually contacted me and let me know that actually they were doing a great job of now looking after the dogs. They have regulations there and officers that look after that, and this problem is really going away. So this is becoming actually much less of a problem than maybe it was 30 years ago, and certainly less than 2010 and even now. So there is a recommendation in front of you, and I'm here for questions.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. I've got Director Nicholson first, followed by Director Martman.
Just a point of potential conflict of
that's a new one. Director Martman, what's your point of potential conflict?
I may have a conflict of interest here. being a kennel owner, so I don't know if this gets into any financial discussion. It doesn't sound like it. Or if it does, I'll have to recuse myself.
Through the chair, it is just put in as a financial option. That is up to you how you want to view that financial option. This was asked to look at all the financial options. That is one of them is raising the fees on kennels.
Director Martman, the decision to recuse yourself from discussion is yours and yours alone. So would you like to recuse yourself from the discussion?
No, but I think I have to. So, thank you.
Okay.
Yes, I do. He's a passionate farmer, and I stand behind him as being a passionate farmer.
And kennel owner, apparently.
Apparently, yes.
Director Nicholson.
Thank you. I'm supportive of the recommendation, but as someone who's had 6 sheep now killed by cougars and dogs, I think it's, it is an issue, for sure. And the dog thing is an issue. It's usually neighbors who don't mean to have a problem dog, but they do. And I agree that it's very difficult to prove it, unless you have a camera with you at the time you see it happen or whatever. But I did read the Livestock Act, I think, and the compensation is only available if you apply for it within 48 hours. And so the times that I had dog issues, I was never told about the possibility of compensation either through the CVRD or through the Livestock Act. And because there's a time, if we don't provide it, and because there's a time limit, I think it's really up to us to do a service to the community and make sure they get that information in a timely way if someone has a problem. So I can support this if we could try and do a job of helping people access the funding.
Through the chair, I certainly recognize what you're saying there. There's a couple points that I can talk about. Ours also has a time frame on it, and it is very narrow, similar to that 48 hours. Further to that, this is unlicensed dogs we're talking about. If you know who the dog is, then it's a civil matter, and that's generally what will happen. They will go after whoever owns the dog. Cougars and other wild animals, in this case, are not covered. It's only wild dogs.
Any further questions for staff? Seeing none, what's the pleasure? Director Segal, move the recommendation. Do we have a seconder? Moved and seconded. Seeing no further discussion, call the question. Oh, wait a minute. Could you read the resolution, please?
Thank you, Chair. That'd be recommended to the board that CVRD bylaw number 4582, dog regulation and impounding amendment bylaw 2024, be forwarded to the board for consideration of first, second, third reading and adoption.
Call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries. Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Next item.
Thank you, Chair.
It's gone quiet at my end. Is anybody talking?
Yeah, everybody's gone quiet on you there, Mike. We're just waiting for Director Martman to return from whence he came. And there he is. Ms. Boyd, next item.
Thank you, Chair. R7 report from the Parks and Trails Division regarding a new license agreement with Timber West Forest Corp., Masons Beach Park, Electoral Area B, Shawnigan Lake.
Please.
Thank you, through the chair. I don't have a presentation, but the purpose of this report is to seek approval to enter into a 5-year license agreement with Timber West Forest Corporation for Masons Beach Park in Electoral Area B, Shawnigan Lake. The park has been operated under a license agreement since 1991, and staff have been working with Mosaic since last August to prepare the current agreement. The agreement is attached to the report, and Schedule A to the agreement identifies the license area.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Director Acton.
Hi, Lynn.
Hello.
Nice to see you here. I guess myself and the chair of the Parks Commission, we were a little surprised to see that we actually don't own that land as a Parks Commission. So since we're gonna spend money on it, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when it comes to our parks budget, it is something that could do something else maybe, or, I think this would be a nice discussion at either the commission level and at the staff level as well, is why isn't Mosaic just giving it to us?
Director Acton, that probably is a very worthy discussion to have, but as it pertains to a license agreement,
Well, we would rather, as a community, own it as a park than keep doing this license agreement,
yeah.
This would be the time and place, no?
No, it would
Okay.
not be the time and place. And
So can we send it back and ask staff to discuss the ownership? with
Mr.
Mosaic?
Farquhar, can you please help? I know what I want to say, but I'm not going to say it.
Mr. Chair, the best advice from staff right now is we've been operating it for a number of years, having taken it over from the Shawnigan Community Association, who entered into an agreement a long time ago. And basically, the original license transfer to the CVRD and agreement of the board. Best recommendation at this point in time would be to, if there's an interest in it continuing for public use, to renew the license of use, and then separately, we could look to interest in acquiring it as a separate discussion with Timber West at the appropriate time. But for now, it's really about dealing with our presence there, the assets we have there under the agreement that needs to be renewed, and the public's use of that area. So there's nothing to take away from an opportunity to discuss in future with Timber West, the opportunities to acquire it, but this will allow us to continue to operate on behalf of the community by entering into a license now.
Thank you, Mr. Farquhar. I would highly recommend that, in light of the conversation, that the resolution be put forward and considered.
Well, we're just heading into budget.
Hang on, let's take a 5-minute break.
Okay.
Welcome back, everyone. We're in R7. Have you read? Oh, we haven't had it moved and seconded yet. Would the director like to move this item? Do we have a seconder? Moved and seconded. Ms. Boyd, would you read the resolution?
Thank you, Chair. That it be recommended to the board that the CVRD enter into a 5-year license agreement with Timber West Forest Corp. to manage Mason's Beach Park in Electoral Area B, Shawnigan Lake, commencing October 8th, 2024, and expiring October 7th, 2029, unless extended through mutual agreement.
Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries. Ms. Boyd, R8.
Report from the Fire Rescue Services regarding Union of BC Municipalities Grant Application Community Emergency Preparedness Fund.
Welcome.
Thank you to the committee. So purpose of this report is to obtain approval to submit a grant application to the 2024 Union of BC Municipalities Volunteer and Composite Fire Department Grant on behalf of the 6 CVRD fire departments and the Kaikous Volunteer Fire Society. So the grant, we're a little bit late on this one. I came in a little bit late. It has been submitted, but this is, the main purpose of this one is we'll be responsible for controlling this and the budget side of it through my section. And we're just looking for support from the committee to apply for this grant. As I say, it's $280,000 total grant. So really good for our volunteer departments, and they need the money.
Any questions for staff? Director Nicholson.
Thank you for this. I support it, but I'm just curious, do we have like an overall plan? And we get so much funding for the emergency preparedness through grants. And so it can be kind of an ad hoc kind of a deal, but do we have like a master plan of what our priorities are that we try and match up for?
So when I go out to the chiefs of each department, I ask them what we go through their priorities. Even this year, some of the chiefs came back with, I think we're in pretty good shape, where I come back with, no, you're not. We have to look, so this year we tried to focus on health and safety. So we're looking at proper SCBA equipment, we're looking at turnout gear for the thing. Some of the halls, we're actually revamping the old wooden stalls that are in the halls, and we're putting in proper ventilated stalls that the gear can dry quicker. Couple of the halls, again, we're looking at dryer assemblies. So proper gear dryers that are approved gear dryers. So I would say this year, 70% is health and safety for our first responders.
Director Martman.
I just hope you get it, because North Oyster is in for 40.
Yeah, so every department is actually submitted for the full 40. 100% for the 40. With North Oysters, that will supplement hopefully later on the SCBA purchase.
Director Abbott.
I was going to move the recommendation.
Currently, we have it moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Ms. Boyd, next item, thank you very much.
R9, report from the Fire Rescue Services regarding Function 350 fund transfer.
So as we just mentioned, the purpose of the report, request a supplemental budget amendment for the North Oyster Volunteer Fire Department. This is for those, as the Director mentioned, for those SCBA purchases. At this time, they had some replaced a couple of years ago, and now the rest of them need replacing. So their SCBA's, the ones that are, believe it's 21 that need replacing, are at end of life. So we need to get those replaced. Again, it's a critical part of the personal protective equipment for our first responders.
Any questions for staff? Director Martman?
Thank you, and thank you for this. I had a good conversation with our fire chief, and I thought it may be useful for you to share about the SBDA's, the renewal of them changes, like the new standards, and maybe talk about the new standards and how it makes firefighting more effective with the times that they're allowed and that type of thing.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Director.
Go ahead.
So times are changing, both with our CBA, that's our respiratory protection. There's a lot of big push on right now, and thankfully there is a big push on it, on the protection of our firefighters with hydrocarbons and cancer. So I think everybody's heard it in the news how our firefighters we're losing a lot of firefighters to cancer. So upgrading these SCBA systems along with the new regulations with the down man alarms, down person alarms. So if firefighter goes down after so many seconds, it starts to go into alarm. So that'll allow others to come in, our rapid intervention teams to come in and get that person out. So keeping up with the technology is not always possible, but trying to keep up is imperative that we do that. And I think these SCBAs are a good step in the right direction for our first responders.
Director McClinton.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just thinking about the Thetis Island Fire Department, and if this is a stretch, you can cut me off, Chair, but I'm just curious how the improvement districts keep up with these sorts of regulations. If you can speculate, if you can't, I understand.
Speculation's never a good thing to do. Do you want to comment on that?
That's up to you, Chair. I don't mind. I do converse with the improvement districts. They're actually, in a lot of ways, ahead of us with funding and being able to keep up. So I know with Mill Bay, they're ahead of us for sure, than a lot of our CVRD departments. And I haven't seen or hadn't heard any issue through the fire chiefs or Cowichan Valley Fire Chiefs of any issues with that at all. So if they are happening, I haven't heard about them.
Moved by Director Martman, seconded by Director Segal. Resolution, please, Ms. Boyd.
Thank you, Chair. That it be recommended to the board that the 2024 budget for Function 350 North Oyster Volunteer Fire Department be amended by 1. Decrease transfer to capital reserves by $95,000. 2. Increase transfer from capital reserves by $190,000. 3. Increase transfer from operating reserve by $75,000. And 4. Increase capital expenditures by $360,000.
Everyone ready for the question? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries. R10.
Thank you, Chair. A report from the Fire Rescue Services regarding BC Fire Safety Act appointments.
Thank you. Purpose to provide an update on the newly released Fire Safety Act following the FSA presentation to the Electoral Service Area on October 16th, and to seek direction to appoint fire inspectors and fire investigators. So we have a list, and again, gone to each fire chief and asked them for their appointments for each area. And for those that I've got back, you can see them in the list for Honeymoon Bay, Malhap, Missachi, North Oyster, Satlam, Yubo, Mill Bay, and Cowichan Bay Fire, the appointees as per their chief's recommendations.
Thank you. Director Acton.
Thank you. I noticed that Shawnee and Lake has, I guess, not replied to you, and it says that it's required through the CVRD, so will they still have a chance, or is this their one and only chance?
No, it will not be their only chance. So you are correct. Myself and Thetis have not replied, and I've had conversations, many in the last couple of weeks, with the fire chiefs about it. Once they go through their boards and decide what their direction will be, at that point, you'll get another staff report through to get their appointments as their per the requirements.
Director Martman.
So this is a question where I don't know what I don't know. So is there a budget implication with these appointments, whether it's training, added dollars, anything?
Okay, so the fire commissioner on putting out the Fire Safety Act has committed to providing free training, online training for anybody appointed. For the actual out of CVRD budget, you'll notice that myself, under the CVRD, as the manager of fire services, has been appointed, and they're by position. So there will be, if needed, some travel expenses on that. But other than that, we don't foresee at this time any expenses.
Did we have a mover and a seconder on this yet? No? Moved and seconded. I'm going to comment in that not yet. This has been the one that has been at UBCM and ABICC, and I think we even had a gentleman here a little while ago that was telling us how it's not going to cost us anything. But I think that'll remains to be seen as it rolls out in the future. So I will support this today. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Are there any opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. Thank you very much. R11. Do we have a staff person going to get up in front of us and talk to us, or Mr. Brisky? Oh.
Report from the Inspection and Enforcement Division regarding Building Inspection 2024 third quarter report, R11.
What is 11? Pardon me.
Mr. Brisky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm available for questions.
We've seen a real downturn in our building permit applications and even single-family dwellings, have we not? I think you made remarks to that effect in your report.
Yes, Mr. Chair. It's looking back through the 5-year data, this has certainly been a slump, to say the least. So.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff? It's an information item only. Thank you very much. Next item.
R12, report from the Inspections and Enforcement Division regarding Bylaw Enforcement 2024 third quarter report.
Welcome, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of the report is just to inform the EASC of the bylaw enforcement activity throughout the district. In the third quarter, July 1st to September 30th. Some notables within quarter three is with the support of the committee and ultimately the board. We've enacted ticketing for development permit area violations, and the officers have been busy with that. And furthermore, it's not exactly in the third quarter, it was just, we received the agreement back from the city of Nanaimo on October 1st, but as the board, or as the report stipulates, the bylaw dispute adjudication system is implemented and running. And I'm here for questions as well.
Any questions for Mr. Harris? Wow, all around the room. We'll go to Director McClinton first.
Is there any anecdotal evidence about fireworks this year for Halloween? It seemed that there was less being lit off, but just curious.
We haven't fully analyzed it yet, but from the information that I have seen through the charity, Director Clinton, the complaints are down, which is good. And you know, I'm sure everybody has their own experiences in each of their electoral areas, but the information that filters back to us, there seems to be a downward trend. I don't know if people are slowly getting the message, or they're being a little more responsible, or they're just not reporting.
Follow up?
I think it's strong leadership.
I'll appreciate that, and I'll take that. Thank you.
Director Martman, or no, Director Acton.
Thank you. My question was around, I think it was like 6% short-term rentals, complaints. Just wondering if you could like expand on that. Is that?
So,
like,
yeah.
what kind of what's the story behind that?
Okay, so through the chair to Director Acton, short-term rental is sitting at 4 complaints for the third quarter. The second quarter, there was 1 complaint. And we are still in the process of enacting our proactive short-term rental enforcement. So that hasn't been launched yet. It's still generally complaint-based, and that's the numbers that we have at this time. So like I said, 4 for the third quarter and 1 for the previous quarter in Q2.
Do you know anything about these complaints? Are they because they're just like loud, party houses, or just, neighbors being really upset that someone's breaking the rules? Or
Yeah, through the chair to the director. Generally, yes, it's a nuisance disturbance type events that will trigger these complaints. Plain and simple as that. I guess out of sight, out of mind, but if there's a lot of people that live year-round on the lakes and in some of these areas, and they're, exposed to these nuisances where, it's pretty well known that, they're not all nuisances, but there's people come up to have a good time. And they come up in large groups, and then that's where you have your off-street parking, your noise, your boat activity, this and that, and it's generally will generate the complaint.
Nothing, Director Martman? Excellent. Seeing no other, it's an information item, seeing no other questions, thank you, Mr. Harris. Where does that take us to now?
Thank you, Chair. We have no unfinished business, no new business, question period, not seeing anybody in the gallery. We move to closed session, a motion that the meeting be closed to the public in accordance with the Community Charter, Part 4, Division 3, Section 90, subsections as noted in accordance with each agenda item. We have the closed minutes from October 16th, 2024. We have law enforcement subsection 1F, and again for CSR 2 law enforcement subsection 1F.
Do we need to log into the other login? Motion has been moved and seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries.